Hi there, and welcome to another installment of What the is going on. It doesn't seem like too much is going on right now. Well, a lot of stuff is happening, but not a lot of effects are showing yet. For instance, we had this giant emergency meeting of the EU politicians, and, well, what has come of that? Not really a lot, it seems. But that's probably just what it seems like, because one thing that's come of it, which is quite unusual, is that there's already been a new meeting announced today, and the other meeting was just the day before yesterday. So that's unusually quick. Usually the EU moves at, well, a glacial pace is probably being a bit too kind, because things are very, very slow. But not this time. This time it took one day and then they meet again. And it seems like the meeting wasn't completely devoid of results. Well, results that we've heard of, definitely. But Annalena Baerbock, the German defense minister, she's in an election, and then you tend to open your mouth a bit more than you usually would, because, well, you do want those nice votes. And she let slip that the EU is preparing another support package for Ukraine. And this is supposedly a massive one. The number that was mentioned was 700 million euros. No, not million, billion. It just got the first letter wrong. Billion euros. That's absolutely massive. I don't think it's going to be that much because, oh yeah, it's just a lot of money. But I do think that she's telling the truth when she says that there's a massive support package coming in response to the American withdrawal from the war, because that's basically what's happening. America is throwing Ukraine under the bus and saying, well, you sort this out to the Europeans, we'll make a deal, we'll grab some profit, but the Europeans need to sort this out. Yeah. What's that phrase? No taxation without representation? Yeah. And that's basically what's happening here. The Americans, well, Trump, let's not generalize too much, but Trump wants to take Europe and set them outside of the room where the decisions are being made, and yet he wants the Europeans to fund the bill. Yeah, that does sound a bit like the art of the deal Trump version, but it's not gonna fly. And that's not the only thing. It's only been a few days, so we haven't seen a lot of results. But quite unusually, we've had some very quick results from the Danish Prime Minister. She's announced the creation of a defense fund, and it doesn't sound like a lot. It's about 6.5 billion euros for the Danish defense over the next 2 years. And while that doesn't sound like a lot of money, you need to keep in mind that the Danish population is only slightly less than 6 million people, and it's in addition to what is already being transferred to the Danish military. So it's quite massive, and it's quite unlikely that Denmark is going to be the only country making moves like these. But there hasn't really emerged anything yet other than this meeting that's going to happen, well, today. And speaking of Ukraine, well, what's going on with Ukraine? Well, not a lot, really. Well, a lot of stuff is happening, but the front line isn't moving a lot. But what is moving seems to be that it's moving in the direction of, well, what the Ukrainians want. They managed to break through around Pokrovsk, which is good because that city was threatened, and that's a kind of a linchpin for a current front. So they seem to have some good stuff happening there. And then Zelensky has reacted to Trump's, let's call it a deal. He wanted to have access to 500 billions worth of natural resources in Ukraine, and then he wanted 50% of any money made from exports from, well, everything else really in Ukraine. That's extortion, more or less. And he still, for that price, couldn't promise to deliver security guarantees. He just wanted that money as payment for what has already been delivered, which is less than $200 billion worth of equipment that would be scrapped otherwise. So that does seem a bit, well, extortionist, but I guess that's Trump for you. And Zelensky reacted as you might expect. In a very polite way, he gave Trump the middle finger because he refused to sign the deal that had apparently, according to Trump, already been agreed upon or almost agreed upon. And, well, that was more or less it. And then he very, again, politely asked the European Union and all other European states to get their act together and form a solid defensive force, because the Russians are not going to be stopping at Ukraine, which is, well, basically a no-brainer. We all know that by now. You only need to listen to Putin for, well, if you can stand it a couple of minutes, then you know where this shit show is heading. So guess that's Ukraine for now. It's not really a lot. And then we have the US, because, well, as things are, we always have the US. Yeah, where do we start? Well, the Trump sledgehammer that I mentioned last time, it's continuing. And Trump and, well, more Musk probably, Elon Musk, who does the sledgehammering for Trump, or at least is not being prevented by Trump, he managed to take down part of the Department of Energy because, well, they aren't needed. Who needs anyone to watch anything? Except this time he managed to show off the level of competence with which they are working, because this department, well, they are the ones, what do you call it, who keep control, who keep an eye on the American nuclear weapons stock. And not just that, they handle the refurbishment. Nuclear weapons can't just sit around forever. They aren't quite as sensitive as chemical weapons. They don't just randomly degrade and become dangerous, but they do degrade and become non-functional. To do something about that, you take them apart, you check the electronics, and then you replace a part of the core that's needed to detonate the weapon. And then you put it back together again and return the weapon to the stockpile. Does sound reasonable, doesn't it? Well, the people doing that, they are employed by the Department of Energy, and those are the ones Musk fired. Yeah, that doesn't sound too clever. You can't handle your nuclear weapons. You only have the active ones. The ones in stock aren't being dealt with anymore. That doesn't seem too clever. And yeah, no, it doesn't. And they realized this fairly quickly after they fired them, which seems like an odd point in time to recognize something like this as being a bad idea. I think you check these things out before you execute on them, but apparently not when you're Elon Musk. And now they're trying to rehire those same people, but because they shut them out of everything, they can't get in touch with them. So they can't rehire them very easily. What is that thing? Laurel and Hardy. Well, this is another fine mess you've gotten me into. I guess that's where we are at right now. So the demolition train keeps rolling in the US. Nothing new there. Trump is golfing a lot, and the rest of the world is left to deal with the fallout. And again, the next really interesting thing coming up is that EU meeting today. And then we're going to have the German elections in, well, 3-4 days from now. So that's going to be interesting. And I'll take a look at that when we get closer, or grab the camera for another video as something interesting pops up in the meantime. Until then, see you. Oh, I almost forgot. There's another video that's, well, it's not surfaced, it's been broadcast on German television in the meantime, which shows precisely why you shouldn't be too worried about the AfD, the Alternative für Deutschland, getting a part of the power in Germany. The leaders of these parties were discussing the situation in Ukraine, and the leader of the AfD talked about remaining neutral and that they shouldn't be doing anything because then Russia would no longer consider Germany neutral. And then she was told off by Friedrich Merz, yeah, who's the leader of the CDU, the German Christian Democrats. He made it very, very clear that Germany is not neutral in this conflict. They are on the side of Ukraine, and this is exactly why he'll never, ever, and that's his words, he'll never, ever allow the AfD to get part of the power in Germany. He'll do whatever he can to keep them out. That's going to be kind of hard to walk back. The election results, well, we think they're given, but we also thought that Trump would definitely lose. So sometimes people surprise you, even when there's many of them as in the German electorate. But even if things change radically there, the AfD will need more than 50% of the vote to be able to form a government, because no one else wants anything to do with them, and that was made very clear. And Merz, well, even if he gets fewer votes than expected, and he will, with the numbers as they are, find it hard to form a government without the AfD, he'll have a very hard time walking back that exchange. So, well, interesting stuff does happen, but it doesn't happen very fast. Well, on the surface at least. But guess we'll see the results of all that mess within too long. So, that was it. See you next time.